Hello, everyone. So we just dropped a brand new blog on our website at accesscollegeamerica.org where I talked about understanding the SAT and ACT. And so I wanted to quickly go over some of the topics that were covered in this article. One of the first things that you'll want to consider when trying to understand these tests is setting a goal score. What does a good goal score look like for you? And it's going to vary depending on what year you are. Now, in the article, we kind of differentiate between sophomores and juniors, but as a sophomore, it's really a good idea to really get a better sense of maybe what your college list looks like before being able to figure out what that goal score is. And I think building your list and getting that figured out is one of the first steps you'll want to take before you can even begin to figure out what a goal score might look like. We always tell our scholars that when you aim for that competitive school, that the rest of the schools always fall in line. And so as a junior, then that's really where you have a better idea of what your school list looks like, and you can get a better idea of what a goal score might be for your tests. And I believe in the article, I do mention that you really want to confer with the common data set. Going there in section C in the common data set is exactly where you can find, well, specifically in section C, in section C9, is where you'll find the SAT and ACT scores for the school that you might be looking at. So once you've set a goal score, then you've got a good idea of what you're actually aiming for. So you're not just shooting, like kind of shooting in the dark, so to speak. So you've got a good idea of what you're looking for. The next, it was, I guess you want to call it a tip that was mentioned, in the article was really which test should you take? The SAT or the ACT, which one is right for you? Early on, especially as a sophomore, it it really it really makes a lot of sense to practice. Just take practice tests, practice and more practice. You don't necessarily need to take 4 or 5 or 6 practice tests, but you'll have your PSATs, which just recently came out, right? As of, at least of this recording, if you're watching it around December. But once you have that information, you can then start to take other practice tests and see if the score is replicated or if maybe another test is the right one. So you get your PSAT score, maybe you take the ACT, a practice ACT, and you do exceptionally well on that. Oftentimes students who excel in math and excel in math do a lot better on the ACT, but there are some nuances between those two tests. But figuring that out sophomore year is really critical so that when you go into junior year, you've got a good idea of what test you're really looking at. Now, as a junior, if you don't know which test is the right one for you yet, then you really want to make sure that you get that down, because if you don't know what test you excel at going into the year, then that's not necessarily a situation where you're playing catch up, but it is one of the first conversations that I do have with juniors who are just kind of starting to think about that. And one other thing I would say is really make sure you prep for that PSAT in October. Even if it's a little bit, don't take that test lightly, because again, we're trying to use that as an indicator of which test might actually be a good fit for you. So take that test seriously, especially if you might feel that you're in the running for a national merit scholarship. It's really important. There's a couple of factors that make that test a little bit, more important than maybe you would have otherwise thought. So outside of that, then once you know really which test, is a good fit for you after you've kind of put that time in, and I'm really summarizing this. There's a lot more that goes into this. So we do always recommend that, maybe get with us and chat about it and see kind of what your options are, right? But once you know which test is, a good fit for you, then you really want to start figuring out, how do I practice and how do I study? I was just talking with a family about this today. They were wanting to start studying for the SAT a year before they might even think about taking it. And you don't need to be studying for an entire year for one of these tests. Oftentimes the prep time is, maybe 8 weeks prior to the test, but you can be doing things like, reading and getting your vocab, built up and things like that, of course. And, always you can practice, a little bit of math here and there, but you don't necessarily need to be studying hardcore, because, your resources are going to be stretched way too thin, right? You've got so many other things going on. So As a sophomore, it's all about the practice tests. As mentioned previously, not only are they good for figuring out which test is the right fit for you, but it gives you more experience in that testing environment too. Now, as a junior, when we think about practicing and studying, it's really important to take into account, once we figure out which test we want to take, when are we going to take the test? That's the next part of the article too, and this video. But practicing and maybe recruiting the services of a prep service to help you get ready for the test is always a great idea. But of course, you can always do self-studied schedules. I know Khan Academy has some good self-paced schedules that you can adhere to. We always recommend Apple Roof to a lot of our scholars, but keeping that test date in mind, which really is the next natural kind of progression here, is when you take the test. I would be shocked if a sophomore is taking this test. I think it's one of those things where if you are way ahead of the game, maybe you take a test to summer of your sophomore year, but oh my gosh, you would have to be really far ahead of the game on this. So really, as a junior is when we would expect you to first take that test, maybe in the fall, sometimes in the spring, but it really depends on what your current situation is, what your course load looks like. Have you figured out which test is the right fit for you yet? If you have, great, then we can kind of figure out when to take that test. The beginning of that year, of the junior year, could be a good time. School's slow. Maybe it's right after the holiday. Maybe it's in the summer. But this wasn't mentioned in the article, but we do recommend, or at least I don't think it was, we do recommend that you don't take the test any more than 3 times. Both tests, like combined, any more than 3 times. And the reason for that is because once you've got, of course, diminishing returns, but then, your resources could be better spent getting involved in your activities, just keeping your grades up. So when we think about taking this test, it's with the idea that it might be a maximum of 3 times. And so some scholars or students might only take it twice, but working with your timeline, going into your junior year, you've kind of got an idea of what your schools look like. You know which test is the right fit for you. Get with a prep program, right? Either enroll the help of a prep service. We like to recommend More Than a Teacher for all of our scholars. They're amazing and excellent, and they have online classes too. So if you're not in the area, they do have online classes. And so, working maybe with someone like them, or if you have your own self-paced program, but figuring out what that timeline looks like for the test that you're looking to apply or to apply to test for is really important when considering when you're going to take the test. So this video really could be very, very long if we were trying to go all into the weeds of when you might take your test and all the other components. But I just want to make this quick video summary of kind of what the article talked about and what you might want to be thinking about when understanding the SAT and ACT. But go check out that blog on accesscollegeamerica.org, and maybe we'll talk to you sometime soon. All right. Thanks so much.